behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, warmly welcome all of you to this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. I would like to welcome officials from the Ministry of Finance, the Investment Division, also the Ministry of Public Utilities, the National Maintenance, Training and Security Company, MTS, of course, members of the media, and of course, members of the public who would be viewing these proceedings live. May I, at the same time, inform all of us that this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel called ParlView. Now, the purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited accounts, balance sheet, and other financial statements of the National Maintenance, Training and Security Limited, MTS, for the period 2008 to 2016. Our committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at MTS in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of our committee is to help MTS improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. May I repeat? The role of our committee is to help MTS improve its delivery of services in an efficient, economic, and effective manner. At this point in time, I would like to ask the officials from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division, in that order, the Ministry of Public Utilities, and officials of the National Maintenance, Training and Security Company Limited, in that order. But before I ask you to introduce yourselves, may I take the opportunity to ask my colleagues who are members, who all comprise our committee called the PAEC, to introduce themselves. And I'll start on my far right, and we will continue and then go to investment, public utilities, and MTS.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee, our guests from MTS and the Ministry. My name is Foster Cummings, committee member.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nian Gatsvidoli, committee member.
Very good morning, Fitzgerald Hines, member.
Good morning, Tim Gopi Singh, member and vice chair.
Good morning, everyone. Sherry Ann Kuchlo-Koban, member.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Jennifer Bettis Primus, member of this committee.
Morning, everyone. Wade Mark, chairman of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ibed Bab, acting director, social and economic transformation, Ministry of Finance, Investment Division.
Good morning, Ryan Maharaj, acting senior business analyst, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Nisa Charaman, senior audit analyst with the Central Audit Unit, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Beverly Khan, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, everyone. Joel Straker, Senior Policy Analyst at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, everyone. Janet Cupid-Sintler, Financial Specialist, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Lazarus. I am the chairman of the National Maintenance and Security Company Limited.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Lennox Ratan Singh, Chief Executive Officer of MTS.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Ferguson. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at MTS.
Good morning, everyone. Adila Ilahi, Corporate Secretary, Legal Advisor, MTS.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aretha Ram, Internal Auditor, MTS.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith McDonald. I'm the Deputy Chairman, MTS.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alana Hussein, the Divisional Manager of HR at MTS.
Pleasant good morning. My name is Sherwin Gosain. I'm the Divisional Manager Marketing of MTS.
Well, may I once again formally welcome all of you to this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. At this time, I would like to invite the chairman of the MTS to make a few brief opening remarks before we engage in our formal inquiry and discussions. I invite the chairman to do so at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. MTS is in the business of ensuring a clean, safe, secure, and sustainable environment for its customers and the people who use its facilities. During the 38 years of evolution, MTS has built a committed and knowledgeable workforce and a solid customer base. It prides itself by being a state enterprise that does not receive government subvention. As a responsible state enterprise, we are up to date with all our statutory obligations, including tax and VAT payments, our annual reports and audited financial statements, OSHA, minimum wages, industrial relations, and other labor-related laws. MTS is a business success and a national asset. Throughout the company's history, we have demonstrated that MTS fills an important need for our country, its employees, and its shareholders. As the chairman of such an outstanding state organization, it was my goal upon appointment to develop an existing framework on the existing framework of the company, improve it, make it more efficient, and expand its role to meet those of the client's current and future needs. In this way, as a board of directors, we would ensure the company remains relevant to the needs of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Thus, the 2016 to 2021 strategic plan for managing the nation's facilities and protecting people was developed. I believe the objectives and strategies that we have set for ourselves are the right choices to move MTS forward and give it a future position of even greater value to all our citizens. The plan is intended to help MTS capitalize on the current opportunities by charting a course to navigate the political, economic, and social environment in which we do business. It deepens our core responsibilities in security and expands what we do to manage our nation's facilities. The plan's focus is on three strategic objectives: institutional strengthening, expanding facilities management and protection of people, and enhancing MTS's social responsibility. All three relate to each other, and success in all three will provide a foundation to sustain MTS in the future. If I may say a little bit about the objectives, institutional strengthening is our objective 1, and that is to remain relevant and play a leading role in the facilities management industry. To do so, we need to strengthen our key institutional capacities by becoming more strategic through initiatives to improve the quality of the processes and services and ensuring that it is meeting the needs of employees and customers. Strategic objective 2, facilities management and protecting people. MTS will reposition itself from a provider of maintenance and security services to become the leader in comprehensive facilities management and deepen people protection. Given global security threats and propensity for crisis or disaster, we believe as a state enterprise, seeking the public's interest, we are best positioned as the guardian of the government's mission-critical facilities. These are the sites that must remain functional and secured during any time of disruption or crisis. MTS will also position itself as the steward of our national building treasures and other government assets. There is enormous savings to be achieved by caring for these facilities in a business-like manner. In times of economic downturn, there is an even bigger need to protect and preserve government facilities and more efficiently manage their life cycles. Our strategic objective 3, which is enhancing our social responsibility. MTS will strengthen its role in fulfilling its social responsibility in protecting the environment, that is MTS going green, and the health and safety of our employees and facility users, working to establish expanded role for MTS in helping to reduce school violence, and working with the government to develop a regulatory framework to improve and set standards for the security industry. Our circumstances are not unique. Healthcare, agriculture, energy, and many other industries face similar financial challenges. MTS can only go in one direction, and that is to make bold changes in order to help shape our future and become relevant and more valuable as a national asset. This does not mean growing in numbers, but growing in our capacity to manage the tasks that need to be accomplished with best practice, processes, and accountability. We believe that we have an ethical obligation to choose this path, and our strategic plan is a roadmap for doing just that. With the dedication of our talent of our employees, friends, and stakeholders, and with the support of the Board of Directors, we are very confident that this plan will help us build on past success and navigate the challenges and threats we still face and ultimately ensure the future of our company and country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask that the CEO is allowed to say a few words at the start, please. Chair?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to put MTS from a historical perspective and where we are now, and the Chairman would outline where we're going. In 1979, when we were created, we had one client, which was the Ministry of Education. That's the purpose we were created for. Providing security maintenance, training, technical services, and project management. We had one client in 6 locations with 300 employees and a revenue base of about 6 million. Today we have 100 clients, 1,000 locations, a revenue base of $450 million per annum, and a staff of approximately 6,000 employees. I want to say, Mr. Chairman, that MTS is profitable for the period under review, 2008 to 2016. The accumulated profits were about $125 million. From 2006 to 2007, we started making profits. We changed the company from a negative retained earnings of $100 million to presently approximately positive $50 million. However, we operate in an unregulated industry, and an uneven playing field, and I want to talk about that later, Mr. Chairman. I want to also bring to the attention of the committee, during the period of review, 2008-2016, it's just something I thought that the committee should know for state enterprises. The changes and the dynamics that took place over that 8-year period is fantastic and phenomenal. We had 3 separate governments. We had 3 different line ministries: Ministry of Works, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Public Utilities, all of that happening in an 8-year period. We have had 9 line ministers, 11 PSs, and in terms of our major client, Ministry of Education, the same changes would have taken place. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the committee, for the committee to understand the dynamics that happen with state enterprises with these changes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so very much for those remarks. May I begin the proceedings on our side by indicating that I too would like to recognize the fact that when state enterprises are able to observe and rigidly stick to the state manual on state enterprises performance by ensuring that at the end of 3 months of your financial year, you can have your financials in order and your books audited, that we today can have before us your audited accounts for 2016. To my mind, it's a very positive and commendable position of a state enterprise. And I hope that some of our colleagues who have been coming before us could take a leaf or a page out of your book as it relates to being on time in submitting, as Mrs. Lazarus said, not only the statutory obligations, but even following a document, even though it is not legal, it is there to offer guidelines, which is the state manual, the manual rather, issued by the Ministry of Finance. So I want to start off by putting that on record. I would also like to ask immediately of the chairman, and maybe the CEO could join in. First of all, if you can share with us what were some of your key accomplishments over the last period that we are examining, although you may not be able to go back to 2008, but you'll be able to tell us, what are some of your key accomplishments? Secondly, what have been some of your key challenges during the period that you have made those achievements? And also, what actions you would have taken to address the challenges that you would have faced as a company? So that is the first area I would like to have you share with us so we can understand, a little more about MTS.
Chair, may I ask the CEO to take this question, please? I have been chairman for less than 2 years. He has been there for the entire period under review, and therefore I think he's better equipped to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Between the period 2008-2016, we have been able to provide audited financial statements as one of our achievements. Timely every year, annual reports timely every year. We have been able to make profits every year, turn the company from a negative to a positive. And the accumulated profits, as I mentioned, is $125 million. We also pride ourselves of being good industrial relations people. And we would have settled nearly 7 to 8 collective agreements during that period. We would have paid most of it from our funding, and our savings, we would have paid over $210 million in back pay during that period to our employees, janitorial workers and security workers. We are OSHA compliant, 100%. And Mr. Chairman, the achievements continue more so with respect to the new strategic plan. So when I reach the new strategic plan, we can talk a little bit on it with respect to some of the things that we have done. We have done a whole lot in training, and we'll talk about it a little later. But let me go to the challenges. Major challenge, we have 6,000 employees. So the question of collective agreements comes up every period. Presently, there's an outstanding matter with TIU that we are trying to settle, and that is an outstanding challenge. There's another agreement that we need to deal with the EPA, which is on the table also. So collective agreements continue to be a challenge for a state agency. I want to say the other challenge is because the playing field is uneven. It's uneven because we tender on the open market with private sector firms, and we tender mostly in the ministries, and these ministries would bear price as the #1 factor for accepting a tender. And while we are observing all our statutory obligations and fulfilling all the things on the table, I do not know if that is being done by the private sector. So comparing us with price alone, but we are still competitive. For example, security, our rates are $30 an hour. The market rate is between $29 to $32 an hour. So we tender, and we are reasonably within the market space. The other challenge, Mr. Chairman, obviously, cash flow. While we are making profits, cash flow becomes a main issue for us. Presently, there's an outstanding sum of $320 million being owed. Most of it from the Ministry of Education, $150 million from the Ministry of Education. And the third challenge is that we have a rate in security that we need to move to in terms of the Ministry of Education. We have been having that for a little while, and we need to move the rate from the $24 an hour to something a little more practical, closer to the market rate. So those are some of the challenges that we would have had. What we did, Mr. Chairman, is in terms of going forward and trying to rectify some of these things. Later on in the proceedings, we'll talk more about our receivables department that we created and a number of strategies we have put in place with respect to cash flow. Despite this, we have been able to pay our salaries on time. The average salary for MTS per month is about $35 million because of 6,000 employees roughly. It's a task, it's a Herculean task. We have been able to pay salary on time and every time.
Could you share with us what actions, as I asked, you have been taking to address those challenges that you outlined?
With respect to the union agreements, we continue to meet with our unions. We did that up to last week. We continue to speak with them and negotiate in good faith. With respect to the debt collections, we have created a receivables department, and we have been in a funny position as a state enterprise because 99% of our business is in the state. We are not allowed to go to court. We are not allowed to sue the state based on the state monitoring manual. So we have to use suasion. But we have corrected our ends of it. Wherever invoicing is lagging behind, we have ensured that our invoicing within 30 days, we ensure that we are visiting our clients, we ensure that but because of so many changes in various ministries, Mr. Chairman, over time with PSs, it becomes a task, a Herculean task to go back and repeat ourselves over and over and over, trying to convince PSs that these bills are outstanding, this is the situation, this is where we are. And when things change and it goes into another year, then those figures got to be audited and audited and audited. So it becomes a problem for us. Nonetheless, we have been collecting on an average, up to about 6 months ago, about $30 million a month from our clients. And within recent times, that have become a bigger challenge in terms of collections. When we fail at the level of the receivables department, the matter goes straight to myself. I myself attend meetings with PSs. The matter goes to the chairman and the board and the finance committee of the board, and those things are taken up at a higher level with various PSs and ministerial committees, if needs be.
Come in. Could you share with us how MTS is addressing an issue that I read in the newspapers just recently. I think it was in The Guardian, where they talked about deductions being made by MTS from the salaries of workers for different loans and credit union obligations. But somehow, whilst they are getting their pay slips with those deductions being taken out, the institutions that those monies supposed to be going to are not receiving them. I know that you have cash flow problems, but how do you intend to rectify the situation? Because that could leave a bitter taste in the mouth. And, you know, I don't know if it's propaganda, but when I read where the workers are saying that the institutions are calling them before the MTS, I don't know if that is true or if that is just propaganda. But you may share with us, with all the cash flow challenges, how are we dealing with that matter?
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairman. Now, this matter has never happened before. This is the first time, this year is the first year this is happening to MTS, and it has to be, it's directly linked to the cash flow. What we did, we called in the unions and we spoke to them and we indicated to them that this is the situation, this is what is happening. Unions are aware that we are in a company with 6,000 persons. It's a very minute number of persons who are making these allegations. We have also called in the credit unions and the financial institutions that we have an obligation to, and they are working with us, and they understand, and they have also vowed they will not charge interest to the workers and so on. We are presently about 4 fortnights backlogged, and just only yesterday we tried to clear one. We are meeting with our clients, and we are expecting to get monies. As soon as those monies come in, those things will be released. I am hoping to do it before Christmas, Mr. Chairman.
And then I'll come in.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. With regards to the deduction, in furtherance of the question raised by the chair, in situations where the employees of MTS, with regards to their financial obligation, for example, to a financial institution, where if they renege through no fault of their own, and there are additional interest charges, how do you all deal with that? Do you all take up that, assume that responsibility?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member, in our discussions with the various institutions, they have assured us they're not going to be charging interest. The matter have not risen as yet, and if it comes to the fore, we will deal with it. But I want to say, when it comes to people's mortgage with HDC or TTMF, we're not interfering with that whatsoever. This is simply the credit union, Progressive, which is really MTS Credit Union, I think Island Finance and Millennium Insurance. Basically, those are the 3 institutions. And those institutions have been called in. And in fact, Mr. Chairman and member, what they have said to us is that we are still the best payer. Many of their clients are not paying at all because of the situation in the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ratan Singh, Madam Chair, MTS. The compliment that was directed from the chairman of this committee a while ago was obviously very sincere and said on behalf of all of us. And now that I've listened to you, Mr. CEO, I recognize that you are doing, MTS is doing a very great job in the most trying circumstances. And for that, I would like to personally congratulate you all in sincerity for that. It is particularly difficult. You said 99% of your business because we are aware, of course, and the country ought to be aware that when your company was incorporated in 1979, it had to deal with schools and training institutions owned by the government, largely the Ministry of Education. That was expanded in 1989 to deal with all ministries and, of course, state bodies, and, of course, to provide project management services. So you do have an element of private business as well in your portfolio. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us how you intend to, using your expanded mandate, to get further into the private sector. And, of course, in particular, I would like to hear a bit about your project management services, whether that has been a very active part of your portfolio, and if not, your impressions as to why not.
Thank you very much, Member. Mr. Chairman, with respect to the private sector, we really tender for ministries and for state enterprises. We really tender for households and private sector. We leave that for the private companies to do. And it has to do also with the union agreements that we have and how flexible those union agreements are, because there are some limitations to people working on weekends and overtime and triple times. So we are very careful how we deal with that. But we continue to, the new strategic plan is speaking to issues of growing revenue and growing revenue in the private sector also. For example, one of the plans that we have, and we are almost there, is having MTS certified with the NTA, National Training Agency, where we, because of our know-how and our knowledge over the last 40 years, we are willing to take on board training and offer it to the private sector, even our competitors, janitorial and security firms, and not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the islands, because the manual and the know-how that we have with security and training is tantamount to the best in the country, in the Caribbean, I dare say. So training is critical. And in fact, we, not too long ago, won a contract, I'm now being reminded, with Nestle. And that was a private sector contract that we won, because we are tendering for the private sector also from time to time. So NTA is one of them. The other thing that we're trying to do, Mr. Chair, is apart from providing training, we are also going to enhance our security department, and we are providing right now an electronic security plan to the board. When that plan comes to the board, that will be offered not only to our clients, but to probably the private sector also. So in terms of electronic security, we are looking to see exactly where we can enter the market on electronic security, instead of just offering manpower, armed and unarmed security. With respect to agribusiness, we have also just brought to the board attention a new plan for agri, and we want to grow the agribusiness and get the business. We're trying to get store certified to get business in Point Lisas and in the energy sector with respect to our landscaping and our agronomy skills, dealing with golf courses, playgrounds, etc. throughout the country. There's a whole lot of things that we can do in that area. We are even thinking of forming alliances with mom and pop nurseries in the country, so we can create some kind of alliance with small private sector people to grow MTS instead of having the industries ourselves. With respect to project management, that is strictly done with the state. And from time to time, the cabinet would approve MTS to be the project manager for a project, and we would move forward with that project management. In recent times, we would have done some work for the THA. We have done some work for NALIS, Ministry of Education and NALIS with some libraries. And we were doing some work for community development with a community center. We are on the market right now searching for work with respect to project management. But as you know, in terms of construction in the country, wherever we can get the work, we are hunting for it, and we are providing the kind of proposals to tender for project management.
Fine. Well, in this segment, one more. I have observed that a number of private security outfits are working for the state in the face of the existence of MTS. What do you think might be the reason or reasons for that? Is it that what do you think might be the reasons for that, given all that you have said?
Thank you again, Member. Mr. Chairman. The private sector industry, I said earlier, it's unregulated. And
you mean in particular security?
In particular security.
Yeah.
Also to some extent the janitorial. Also to some extent. Our recruitment process for security is so rigid in that we don't see a guy pitching marbles in the morning and in the evening with a MTS security clothing. First, he must have a clean bill of, a certificate of good character. He must be a national of Trinidad and Tobago. He must be drug-free, and he must join our team for a 2-week training up front. And it is that recruitment process, Mr. Chair, that allows MTS. Right now we have about 100 or 150 persons that we require for security, we have a shortage of security. The manpower is limited with respect to security. So to come to your question with respect to private sector security all over Trinidad, as opposed to MTS and in some of the ministries, the private sector people can provide that manpower faster than we in some areas because they are selecting persons in a way that we are not selecting people. So the availability of their manpower. For example, if I get a contract now and I win a tender now in the judiciary in Port of Spain, I will have a challenge to provide security. So it might go to another security firm because of the way we do our recruitment.
Okay, point taken. I must let you know that at the moment, with great haste, the state is moving to have the private security establishment properly well regulated. When that is done, I suspect it will bring obvious benefit to you in that regard. And particularly where you provide, well, in the state sector, you have a number of high-profile persons. Let me get really flat on this. I've sat in my office already, and my secretary pressed the buzzer, and the next thing you know, somebody from MTS is coming in to wet the plans or something like that. And I, security conscious as I am, would often wonder about your security, your vetting procedure, and that sort of thing. So, yes, it is heartening to know that you are so robust in your assessment of the people who you use as security. And finally, I'll tell you, so with the regulation, that should even the playing field a little bit and make life a little easier for you. But I must put on record that wherever I have operated as a minister of government, and I've encountered MTS staff everywhere, from the Ministry of Works to the Ministry of Public Utilities, I can tell you, and I want to place this on public record, I've been extremely impressed by the efficiency and the standards displayed by your officers. So you must keep that going against even all the odds. Thank you. I'll give way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Chairman, Ms. Jackie Lazarus, welcome, and Mr. Ratan Singh with his team from MTS, Permanent Secretary, DPS, and other members of the Ministry of Finance. Good morning. I would just want to ask some questions on the finance aspect and the human resource aspect. First of all, congratulations on your ability to generate approximately 450 million in income annually, and to have a savings of close to 100 million. We noticed that a significant amount of your revenue comes from security, which is approximately 220 million, and maintenance 180 million. Could you give us an idea of the breakdown in terms of the provisions of security? Who are your main clients with that? Well, I know education is a significant part, and I want to congratulate you and thank you. During my stint in a former place, you were able to give tremendous support. So could you give us an assistance of how many personnel you have in security and how much you have in maintenance, so we can have an idea of your 6,000, what's the breakdown there?
You just press.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Member Gopi Singh. With respect to security, we have approximately 3,000 security officers. With respect to maintenance, there's another 2,000, roughly, 2,500 employees, and I could ask my team to correct me as I go along with those figures. With respect to technical and the technical aspect of it, we might have another 100 members, agribusiness another 300, and the general secretarial staff and administrative staff about 150. So that should make up our 5,700 employees. I want to say, before I go to break down further, that we pride ourselves of having an office in Tobago. And the office in Tobago have 300 employees, all Tobagonians, including the manager in Tobago. We have hired every single person in Tobago from Tobago. And we provide services for the THA, so that's one of our clients. Security is about 8 million, and maintenance is about 5 or 6 million in THA. With respect to the school sector, our schools contract, we provide security for 500 schools and maintenance for roughly 90 schools. And our security value for the schools contract is approximately $120 million. And with respect for maintenance in the schools, about $80 million. So nearly $200 million comes from the Ministry of Education out of the $450 million. The next largest client that we have, apart from education, would be the judiciary. The judiciary, where we provide security and maintenance for all the courts in Trinidad and Tobago. And I just want to stick a point as I remember. You know, a lot of people underestimate MTS, but at any point in time, MTS would interact with about 350,000 people in Trinidad daily, based on the school, the courts, and the ministries, and wherever we are. We are in some critical areas in the country, like the court, BIR, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Works, TT Post, the police stations. We are in all the police stations. We provide janitorial maintenance. Our contract in the police stations is about $40 million. We provide janitorial for the fire service, for the Coast Guard, the Ministry of Works. Those are our clients, main ones. Ministry of Finance. We just won the BIR building, the new building, because that's part of our strategic plan to go to the high-rise building. So we won the Ministry of Education Towers, the BIR building, Legal Affairs building, and Customs building. We just won those based on our aggressive marketing that we would have put in place. So those are some of our major clients.
Thank you, and I appreciate your direct knowledge on this offhand. So that's sincere congratulations. Mr. Ratan Singh, you have been doing a tremendous job with the security and maintenance at schools, which comes up to about 200 million altogether. So ministry has big bills to pay to you.
Bills.
While we were there, we discussed some weaknesses in the system in terms of the maintenance programs, that you were to have about 10 officers in each one of the schools that you were maintaining. And we found during our time that there were some deficiencies in that area, so that the maintenance programs for the schools depend on a lot on what your team does to prevent the decay in the environment and so on. Has that been strengthened to some extent?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. We did a lot of work during your period. We, in fact, visited almost every school with you, Minister. Things that have been put in place with respect to the maintenance. On an average, we have about 8 workers per school. Now, these schools are different sizes. So you'd have a school on 5 acres of land, another school on 10 acres of land, one school with 1,500 students, another school with 500 students. So what we have done, we have categorized all the schools. And in categorizing the schools, we know exactly the labor that is required for one school, the security that is required for another school, which the ministry would have agreed with us. But it's specific reference to the maintenance. We have taken out the scope of works, because there the issue was, as opposed to EFCL and ourselves, what was supposed to be done. Bearing in mind, these plants are almost 50 years old, and in some cases more, so the attention is required on a daily basis. We have taken out the scope of works, and we have put it in the hands of the Internal Audit Department, and we have created a checklist, and we have appointed 3 quality assurance persons specific to go and look at the checklists and to ensure that the scope of works is being fulfilled on a daily basis. And this report comes straight to the office of the CEO, because of the importance of this client education, we have decided that this is not going to remain at a lower level in the organization. This is going to come straight to the office of the CEO. CEO then calls a meeting with the head of the maintenance division and the regional managers and ensure wherever the deficiencies, these things are fixed. So what we have done is put it in an independent body in the organization called the audit to ensure that these things are rectified.
Thank you, CEO. The other area is the area of the security at the schools. I remember some of the schools have 7 of your security officers, and some to the minimum 3. But yet still, we found that there were some difficulties in the maintenance of discipline in the school. the internal environment is different from the security for the premises. And there were some questions about whether all 7 security officers placed there on a morning remain within the compound for the day or taken out, leaving the school vulnerable and put into other places. Has that been corrected to some extent?
Thank you again, Member. Mr. Chair.
And one more question after that.
What we have instituted, and again, it was by your guidance at that time, register that the principal will now have. And the principal will sign off on the register. So the security officers ought to go in the morning in the principal's office, sign off the register, and the principal will only okay the register in the evening. More so, manpower forms have been developed. So if we say we have 5 officers in the school or 3 officers in the school, no bill is honored by the Ministry of Education unless the principal signs the completion certificate and the manpower sheet, which then goes to our department for processing for payment and then goes to the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education, from time to time, if there's a bill before it, without a principal signature, will not pay. So the test is, and one more thing I want to mention. This board, the first thing this board did when it came into its existence was we need to give back to the country. And one of the areas in giving back to the country was the area of school violence, reducing school violence. So what we have done, part of the strategic plan is that is in terms of crisis management and reducing school violence. We have brought in a criminologist on board, and the criminologist trained some of our officers, and we have targeted all 1,200 officers in the school to be trained with respect to gang violence, to be trained with respect to bullying, to be trained to avert those things. Presently, the program is actually called School-Based Law Enforcement Program. It was successfully executed, and over the last year, Mr. Chairman, we would have trained nearly 300 of the 1,200. Now, we would appreciate I can't do all one time. So I've set up a framework over the next year or 2 to train all 1,200. So we are trying to do a retraining with respect to recognizing what challenges are facing. So notwithstanding all of that, some of the challenges in the school still remain with respect to broken fences, poor lighting, those things that you know that will affect school discipline.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And technology also is another area that we are going to.
You have answered quite. Just last one. A number of the private companies, security companies, from general introspection, have hired a number of non-nationals to meet the demands. Do you have non-nationals on your listing at all? I hope none.
Absolutely none.
Right, thank you. And just one more on the agriculture aspect. In your strategic planning and your forward thinking, why Trinidad and Tobago is looking to diversify, and one of the areas is in the agricultural sector, what strategic plans can you offer the state sector, the government, in helping the agricultural diversification in terms of what you can do from your perspective as MTS?
Member, MTS is going to stick within the parameters of maintenance, training, and security. We are not going to be growing Edwards and bananas soon. However, we do recognize that there are green spaces that we can enhance, and seeing that we are in the business of getting more and more deeper into facilities management, landscaping would be an area that we would develop mainly for state enterprise. And this is where he mentioned that we would be working with the mom and pops in areas of growing plants to supply the nursery, etc. But that is as far as we go, enhancing green spaces.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, I'd like to ask 2 questions. The first deals with the period between 2014 and 16. In your written submission, you indicated that there was a decline in the company's income during that time, but that is matched with an increase in the number of employees by 293. Now, you also stated that one of the strategies to deal with the fact that a number of the security contracts would have been terminated by clients at that time. You're looking at focusing on facilities management as one of the areas to pick up the slack. So what I want to know is the number of employees that were increasing in that time, 293. In what areas would those employees have come in? Would it have been security? Would it have been facilities management? And continuing now with your focus that is dealing with facilities management, where would be, is your number of staff increasing at this point in time, and where would be your focus of increase?
Thank you very much. Yes. In the year 2014 to 2016, the staff increased mostly in the area of maintenance. Presently, we are looking for more security officers. There's a deficit of about 100 security officers to fill us. We have a tender, we have a contract that we are not honoring fully, and the judiciaries are waiting us to supply these workers. And in the judiciary, for example, it's just not ordinary security officers. What we have done some product differentiation. So we have an elite security. If you go to the Ministry of Finance, you'll see somebody with a white shirt and a green pants. If you go to the court, you'll see white shirt and green pants, not one total green. So those officers are what we are in demand for in particular in the judiciary. Did I get your full question?
Yes, I think you answered my full question. And then before I ask my second question, let's follow that up. The recruitment for those elite officers, that is taking place, well.
The first strategy we're using is persons within the organization. Because the organization have a history of good officers, we try to use those good officers in the organization. And a matter of also employee motivation, because they are paid a higher salary with respect to these elite security positions. So while we remove persons in the existing system that are trained, retrained, already aware of security procedures and protocols, and have a good track record with MTS, we put them into the elite security. Then it creates a gap to fill other contracts that we require new entrants.
And is there a very rapid turnover and a high rate of attrition with your security officers at the lower level?
That's one of the challenges. Very good question, Mr. Chairman. Last year and this year, we recruited about 300 officers, and we would have lost about 150. We lose officers to several things. One, persons who are just playing around and need a job may just pop in for a security job and realize the challenges in security and may leave. Two, they may leave because they're using it as a stepping stone and our training and the good name and the brand equity of MTS to move into the police service and the Coast Guard. So we do a lot of national service to Trinidad and Tobago at our cost, at our expense. And thirdly, because the industry is where it is, we have a rigid disciplinary process in the organization. And sometimes when discipline and tribunals start, an officer thinks, before he go through this, it's better to walk away and go and pick up another security job in another fly-by-night company. So those are some of the reasons for the attrition. But we continue to press on to see what can be done.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have one more. So if I just may ask my last question at this point. I know that MTS is also involved with project management because the Ministry of Community Development and Culture is also a client in that regard. What I wanted to know is when did that start? Just a little more information about it. When did you start getting into that area? And how many clients do you actually have? And are you adequately staffed in that project management area? And are you continuing to seek further, just like how you're going into facilities management, are you going to further the thrust into project management?
Mr. Chair, let me see if I can address that. This started almost about 20 years ago, as far as I can remember. Our main client was the Ministry of Education, school repair program. And of course, with EFCL, that is no longer. So we have had a team of engineers and project accountants and supervisors and civil people on board. Some of them have left because there's not enough work to keep them on board. Our main clients presently would be community development, NALIS, THA. Those are our main clients presently. we have had very few new projects on board. Most of the projects are old projects that we are trying to complete, and they are almost on 90% completion stage. Most of them, some of them have not been completed based on funding or change in use of the project in many cases. And yes, project management is something that we want to keep and we want to continue with. The question is, because we're not tendering in the private sector for project management, we continue to solicit with our ministries and our agencies. Just this morning before coming here, I got a call from the THA who asked that if we are interested in doing some project management for the THA, and they may want to invite us to a meeting next week to discuss some project management. I look forward to that meeting.
You described your security arrangements at school, and you very commendably outlined the issues that are in your contemplation: school bullying, school violence. The one thing I did not hear was concerns for terrorism. A school, as the world experience would have shown us, is a very fertile place for terrorist activity. Lots of innocent children running around. I think you need to factor that into your considerations when it comes to security. We are living in a different world today. That's a matter I'd just like to point out. And I would like as well, we have come to the perhaps obvious conclusion that your organization, board and management, have been doing a pretty good job over many years. We are aware, as I indicated earlier, the nation is experiencing very tough economic times, and therefore your clients are with cash flow problems themselves, the Ministry of Education, and unable to pay you, and you can't sue based on the performance monitoring manual from the Finance Ministry. As we say convivially sometimes, massa bull, massa cow, you know. So, but we understand where you are in the midst of that. I want to say this. I want to ask this, Madam Chairman, in light of all of the good things that we are hearing from you and in which we express pride as parliamentarians on behalf of the citizens who we represent, the question of back pay becomes necessary when you do not complete the negotiation within the negotiation period, and therefore you go outside of it. There are some institutions where they're into their third negotiating period and they have not settled the first. What are you doing, or can you do more to ensure that you don't have this issue of back pay? Because I'm aware you owe some money to some of your workers. Can you, or are you taking action to ensure to perfect the ensemble, to perfect your performance record, whether you could settle these negotiations within the time, obviating the need for back pay and the problems that it generates? Your financials show that at this time, in very difficult circumstances, the last accounts I observed, really, you are almost operating to keep your workforce in place. I think you're just about keeping your workers online, for which they should be very grateful, and to be able to hold their jobs in this time. But more specifically, what action are you taking? What are you doing to ensure that you don't have this back pay issue that is so prevalent across the sector generally?
Chair, member. At this point in time, we are requesting of the Ministry of Finance through our Ministry of Public Utilities, to simply get the ministry to pay us some of our bills. We're not asking for all, we're asking for some. We believe that we are currently in a position to start paying the current increase. However, we recognize that the country just does not have the resources, and so we have been in discussion with the ministry to defer the back pay once we are in a position, once we start rolling out the current interest in salary. With respect to being in a position to be ahead of the game, That is not going to happen until such time that we get a large percentage of our bills paid. And so I will use the words that my CEO has used, prayers. We get thrown on a month-to-month basis sometimes by just him praying and a check comes through just in time. So I don't know that we have a strategic position on how we can be current. It is something ideally we would like to do, and we will always keep it in mind when things begin to turn around.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman, I just want to be very clear with respect to your collective agreements. Is it that you are not up to date because you owe retroactive payments, or is it the actual negotiation of the contracts?
The 2011 to 2014 is due. We've had agreement in principle with the union. Just yesterday, we met with the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Public Utilities, and the CPO to just sign off on it. And we are requesting permission to start paying the current payment so that there can be a reprieve.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, I have two questions to ask. I was very heartened to hear you in your opening remarks advise that there is a strategic plan for the period 2016 to 2020. Could you share some of the critical elements of that strategic plan insofar as the visioning for the organization?
Chair and member, that's very easy for me to do because I sleep and breathe this thing. The first item on the agenda is really strengthening the institution. You know, our MTS was built on a really good foundation, and it has, the result manifests itself by how they meet their compliant, how compliant they are, and how stable an organization they are. However, it does need modernizing. And so we're in the process of company reform, so to speak. There's an extensive rollout of the strategic plan with respect to modernizing the processes and accountability within the organization. That's number one. The second item on the agenda is the relevance. I mean, one can ask the question, there are many private organizations out there. Why they could be doing what you're doing? Yes and no. We are driven by public interest much more so than profit. And so we don't cut corners and give less of a value to our clients. We consider ourselves critical to the government, especially focusing on mission-critical facilities. To the extent that where there is a disruption in the country for any reason, we are not going to flee. We are part of the government, and therefore we will be there to protect and secure government personnel and government facilities. And so there's a factor that goes into ensuring that we enhance and improve our ability to do that and to get into those facilities. The third aspect of it that we looked at is that there's a big opportunity with respect to facilities management. So many of our government buildings go into disarray because they're not managed, the maintenance is not managed, and so there's a lot of downtime and a lot of opportunities for disruptive personnel to shut down and to not work because there's problems with air conditioning and all that. And it's no Einstein stuff that if you put in place a process that manages the maintenance of the facilities, even with schools. I mean, while we're not responsible for schools, there's no need for us to be in this crazy drama over summertime to maintain schools. We can run a maintenance system that ensures that the facilities of the schools are kept properly maintained all year round. And summertime, you just do the big jobs that would displace students. But there are many other things you can do on evenings and weekends and even during school time. So schools are not under our purview as of this time. Maybe it will come back under our purview. But facilities management is where we're taking it. And let me say that we are not proposing to increase. But firstly, let me say that we are requesting the ministry to put forward a cabinet note for us to give us the green light as to whether they want us to do facilities management. The second thing is that if we do, then we will do all of the feasibility and the research, etc., to get it done. And thirdly, we don't propose that this will increase, that we will increase staff to do this, but that we will take into consideration the government's intention for local government reform, and therefore we will position facilities and contractors within the regions to carry out the work under the MTS blueprint, under MTS standards and under MTS rules and methods of operation.
On the assumption that MTS obtains the cabinet approval, what is the roll down time for the building capacity in the, well, it's diversification you are engaging in with regards to facilities management?
It's diversification within our, I mean, we are a maintenance company.
What is the timeline
expansion
that you all have looked at?
I would imagine that we have indicated that we should be fully up and running within 2 years. It would be on a phase basis, but that we would have been able to have teams on board within a 2-year period. MTS actually celebrates 40 years in 2019, and I'm hoping that by the year 2019, when that time comes, we would have been a renewed organization with all of these plans well on its way and some element of rebranding at that point in time. Let me also add that part of the strategic objective is to go green. We want to have safer chemicals and that kind of thing in our organization so that we maintain a level of safety, increase our level of safety, and also to look at the broader protection matters at hand, which would have included averting, being more perceptive and being in a position to avert violence, terrorist acts, etc. And to be in a position to do that kind of mass protection when and if a situation occurs.
Is this strategic plan homegrown, or you all engaged a company to assist you all in the crafting of such a plan?
Chair, we certainly engaged to guide the plan, but it is fully homegrown.
Who you all employed to guide the plan?
There's an organization known as the Governance Network of Trinidad and Tobago Company.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask one more question. From your written responses, we understand that there is no whistleblowing policy in the organization. How soon does the company intend to embrace this very necessary mechanism, particularly in light of the recent situations that occurred in this country? Will the company be developing a whistleblowing policy? And if so, how soon?
Chair, member, with an organization of 5,600 employees, you can imagine the amount of whistleblowing that takes place. on a regular basis, and over the years there has been no, so while there's not been a written policy, and I understand what the question, there has been a policy in effect because no one has ever been in any way affected by, their job has not been affected by whistleblowing. I recall prior to coming into the organization, there were a number of whistleblowing in my ears, but, and we did look into the matters that were at hand. They're usually quite petty. Within, I would say, the next 6 months, we will have a written whistleblowing policy within the organization.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
So, can I? Blowing, Mr. Chair. I think the chairman herself would have approved a plan, a corporate communication plan just last month. And part of the plan is a whistleblowing policy that is already in a draft form, and it should be approved within the first quarter of next year.
I am very heartened with that bit of information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As my colleague would have indicated previously that he was very heartened by MTS having their audited accounts up to date, I am also very heartened and wish to commend MTS for having their strategic plan up to date. Now, during your opening statement, Madam Chairman, you would have indicated that this strategic plan is critical to the organization's success. In light of that, I would like you to indicate to the committee whether the plan is being implemented and if you have achieved any milestones thus far.
Good question. I will let the chair answer that. See you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair. The strategic plan, let me just go back and say, within the first 3 months of the board coming into existence, the chairman instituted a plan, and it was approved within the first 6 months of her coming into existence. The plan was submitted to the Ministry of Public Utilities, the Ministry of Finance. The plan was approved. The plan, the three strategic, well, the plan took into consideration Vision 2030, local government reform, and the relevance of MTS, because we had to answer some questions about our relevance. So we thought it necessary to deal with our relevance at this point in time also. So the first plank of the plan, which has to do with institutional strengthening. And under institutional strengthening, we would have talked about stabilizing our finances. Now, obviously, stabilizing our finances have to do with cash flow. We have tightened, and we have had several things put in place to tighten our invoicing procedures. We have also instituted a human resource information system that is being put in place now to ensure timeliness of information from HR into finance. So payroll and all of those things can be sorted out in a faster way. So stabilizing our finances was important. Dealing with our back pay to the union, the EPA, for example, was a full $50 million was paid to them in full. So that was part of the stabilizing of our finance. Under that same heading of institutional strengthening, the company conducted an HR review. We reviewed the entire organization, structure, persons, capacity, whether we need institutional strengthening. Coming out of that, we started doing some supervisory training, and we would have completed about 60 persons already on the supervisory training. And coming out of that, we developed a performance manual, a management system. And that management system, again, we're trying to save some money. So what we have decided to do is in developing the system, we train some trainers. And we are now training our supervisors and our managers how to implement this management system, performance management system. We also have under institutional strengthening, quality control. I indicated to Member Gopi Singh, one of the planks of the school's system was to put some quality officers in place. We are presently doing a new quality assurance plan, and that is in progress. The second part of the plan had to do with facilities management. And under facilities management, the first thing that we did is that we developed a cabinet note, an extensive cabinet note defining facilities management, itemizing timelines, the capacity, and what we will be doing with respect to facilities management. That was submitted to the Ministry of Public Utilities, and it ought to go to the cabinet soon. The second thing under facilities management is that we decided to look at new revenue streams and our relevance. So under new revenue stream, one of the sub-objectives there would have been asset management. In Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Chairman, presently, there are about 150 to $200 billion in government buildings and assets. I don't know if it is inventoried anywhere in one spot or one person, one organization. Because we are in many of the ministries, we saw the need and we saw an opportunity where we can propose to the government an asset management system. And that will help the government, but it will also diversify MTS. And we are already in these buildings, and it will help grow our revenue. And we grow the revenue without being labor intensive, because you would recognize when you have to grow security, by and large, you have to employ persons to grow security. In some of these new measures, it will not be labor intensive. It will be more scientific and technology. The third plank under achievement is that heritage buildings. Because of our experience with the Heritage Library and our success there to some extent, in learning from some outsiders that were brought in to do it, we have decided to target heritage buildings in Trinidad and Tobago for restoration work. So that's another area that we are looking into with respect to project management. So a plan was already developed, so just the achievement. And under the plan also, mission critical, what the chairman was alluding to earlier, all the buildings that are of a security nature that we are in, we are also developing a plan, and it's almost 90% complete, where these buildings will have certain protocols in case of an emergency or terror act or some form of dissidence in the country, we'll be there to deal with it. So by and large, what I'm saying is that many of the things in the plan, the electronic security aspect, the electronic technology, we have a plan that is almost 99% completed. It will come to the board in the next board meeting. I want to say to you, member, that this board is very rigid. And this board don't allow the CEO to sleep. So this board, I have asked that every quarter, a full report comes to the board. So I report the implementation of this plan on a quarterly basis to the board. And a full report is done, which we will now be submitting to the Ministry of Public Utilities also for oversight. And we could go on, but I suspect you could ask.
No, this is my last question here. It has to do with the debt owed of over $320-something million. I wanted to know over what period has that debt accrued, whether any of it is statute barred, and if so, what percentage MTS may need to write off.
Mr. Chair, member, when it comes to writing off debt, especially for the state sector, I am very reluctant. So we are guided by the auditors as to what is. Presently, there's a bad debt write-off about $12 million that they're asking for. That have to go through scrutiny. The process for that, it goes through scrutiny from the finance division, and it goes through the auditors, internal auditors and the external auditors, before we decide on this. But majority of the monies have been owed within the last 3 years or so. For example, this year alone, the Ministry of Education have not paid me $72 million out of the $320 million.
All right, may I, before I invite my colleagues, Dr. Gopi Singh and Mr. Hines and Dr. Glasby Dolly, I have a few areas I'd like to clarify. Now, I have observed that the company has a policy. I think it is clause 3.01 on companies' vacation leave. And I've noted that because of that policy, which allows people to accumulate unused vacation leave, we have a situation where at the end of 2015, there's an outstanding amount of $43 million, and there's an amount at the end of 2016 of $39.7 million, almost $40 million. Now, in light of the company's cash flow problems and or challenges, what does MTS plan to do to address this particular policy, which seems to be generating further difficulty for a company that appears, for all intents and purposes, to be extremely cash-strapped. So I wanted to get your views on, and is this part of the collective agreement, or is this just a company's policy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The policy is not what is causing the accumulated vacation leave. What we do, we try to encourage persons, the divisional manager, HR, she probably can speak to it later, would write and ask that people go on vacation leave on a yearly basis. The real problem is in our security division, where there's a shortfall in manpower. And if persons were to take all their vacation leave, and we are contractually obligated with our clients, we will not have the manpower to replace those persons. So those contracts will not be, we will not be legally binding with those contracts. We'll be shortchanging our clients. So in many cases, we have to turn down persons from going on leave or assuade them to defer leave because of the manpower shortage. But that is a matter, the moment we get up with our manpower to the optimum level, that matter should be addressed. And we'll continue to look at it. It is a matter that I am very concerned about, Mr. Chairman, and I will continue to look at it.
You can make available a copy of your strategic plan to this body so we can further study your direction.
By all means, you'll get that before the end of the week.
Yeah. Now, I want to go to the Ministry of Public Utilities. Now, the Ministry of Public Utilities is supposed to have an oversight role. And we have seen from your submission that you employ both a monthly and annual approach to monitoring and evaluating the operations of MTS. This concept of an operating ratio tells us that in 2013, the ratio stood at 96%. In 2015, 2014, 99%. In 2015, 99%. In 2016, 98%. The literature tells us that a band of between 0.5 to 75% indicates that the company is operating efficiently. If you go outside of that band, inefficiencies step in. So we are seeing where MTS is in the range or zone of 96 to 98%. I would like to know, given the work that is being done by the Ministry's Economic Research, Policy and Planning Division, what recommendations have the Permanent Secretary advanced to address these inefficiencies facing MTS, given what I have outlined? And if you can probably provide this committee with some appreciation of the actions that have been taken by the Ministry of Public Utilities to bring down those levels of inefficiencies. I think MTS might be able to get some more, their cash flow situation might improve somewhat, because there is, in fact, from the raw statistics, based on your own research, Permanent Secretary, that there is, in fact, some inefficiencies at the level of MTS, and you need to tell us how the ministry has the oversight and having its overall role of supervision and monitoring. How are you going to bring down that with the MTS?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed, that's one of the indicators that we are now putting in place to review the performance of all the agencies that fall under the Ministry of Public Utilities. And yes, indeed, the MTS is now falling outside of the range of the what is considered to be operationally inefficient. It's not considered highly inefficient yet. It has not reached the range that is over 1.5%. But I'll ask the financial specialist who has primary responsibility for looking at all the income and monthly statements to throw some light in terms of some of the things that she has seen and what she would recommend.
Okay.
Thank you. In terms of MTS, on a monthly basis, I have been looking at their financials. What they do submit to the ministry is a cash flow statement, all right, which I examine on a monthly basis to see whether there are any things that, would cause any problems. So far, I have not seen anything that, could cause any serious concerns to the ministry. We have also been looking annually at their financial statements, which I think you all also have sight of. These statements have been showing, one of the concerns I think we had, it had to do with the increase in the staffing, which I think they have also addressed, where, there is need for them to increase staff in the security area. So I think it has been justified. Their cash flow situation is one that, has been serious. And again, they have mentioned that the Ministry of Education is their main client, and that is where, they have been having problems, and they will want to, increase the charge-out rates in that regard. So that, in our oversight, we will recommend that going forward, the ministry takes a more active role in making sure that, funds are provided on a monthly basis to meet these responsibilities. Because the thing is that MTS is, going through very serious cash problems because of all of these receivables, over 300 million that is outside there. And as a ministry, we have to take an active role in helping to bring down that figure by going through the Ministry of Finance and seeing if we could get that problem rectified going forward.
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, add that we are in discussions with the Ministry of Finance with the intent of reducing the receivables on a monthly basis across all the ministries that now have monies, including the Ministry of Public Utilities, for MTS. So we are in discussions, and our intent is to reduce that receivable amount of about 323 million by at least half in the current fiscal year.
Then it's to the investments division. Could the investment division share with this committee how are you able to ensure oversight and accountability in an enterprise like MTS? And do you conduct site visits to state enterprises to ensure that your duties and responsibilities re-monitoring in accordance with the manual and guidelines are in fact effective? Could you explain to us and share with us how the investment division is able to effectively do this?
Chairman, thank you. First of all, I'll say that the monitoring of state enterprises is shared between the Line Ministry and the Ministry of Finance. The operational nature is more for the Line Ministry. The Ministry of Finance really does not, on any regular basis, visit, let's say MTS, because our monitoring is more document-based. But we ensure that things like the board minutes, the financial statements, monthly statements, cash flow statements, and strategic plans are basically up to date.
We noticed that in 2008 you had approximately 44 monthly paid employees out of the approximately 5,700, and now that has gone to 100, which makes it approximately 1 to 60 for your monthly to the other members being paid. The rest are classified in what grouping? Are they daily paid employees, fortnightly paid employees? And what measures that you as a company are taking to give some degree of emotional satisfaction and security to the employees who have been there with you for a period of time? Could you give some comment on that?
Thank you, Member. Chair. Some of the employees, monthly employees that would have moved up from the 44 has to do with that fortnightly. We pay fortnightly. Some of the fortnightly members indicated that they wanted to be paid monthly. So we would have moved them from the fortnight to the monthly. So that is what takes place there. So basically there are two forms of payment, monthly and fortnightly. With respect to employees, the organization, a lot of persons are retiring at this stage because we have about 40 years almost in service. So persons who would have started very early are now retiring. Over the years, we have provided training, we have provided educational opportunities, we have provided promotional opportunities, and we have provided, as I said, in terms of collective agreements for this group, we have settled nearly 8 agreements and paid out about $210 million in back pay over this 8-year period. I would not say that MTS workers are the best paid in the country, but in terms of the industry, they are reasonably well paid.
And they feel relatively satisfied that their jobs are...
Well, one of the things that we enjoy in MTS, Mr. Chair, Member, is that employees at MTS are extremely loyal. They consider themselves as family members, and even they go beyond the call of duty. So much so that even in education, the principals treat them as family members. And most of our clients treat our employees as family members. They are very happy, they are satisfied in MTS.
Right, thanks. Just one more on the issue of the accruals of age payable accruals. We have about 123 million. I think there was some alluding to answer to that previously, but I'm not clear in my mind how you're dealing with that 123 million and aged accruals. That is on page 28 of one of your reports. The report is headed Summary of the responses to the follow-up questions raised in the examination of the audit accounts, page 28 at the bottom of it. You have 123 million. And then the debtors, I think your head of finance was responding. You have approximately 330 million outstanding, and receivables, and you have about 16 ministries that are owing, of course, Ministry of Education owing 160 million, and about 4 other ministries owing close to about a total of 80 million. Beside moral suasion, is there anything else you are considering to help you with your cash flow problems?
Thank you, Member. Chair. Chairman was alluding earlier. Yesterday we had a meeting with the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Finance have asked the Director of Budgets to look into our matter to see where monies should be allocated to pay for security and maintenance for the various ministries. Some monies have been, so we have gone to the Minister of Finance for assistance on this matter.
What about the accruals issue? The 123 million.
Can I ask my CFO to address that?
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chairman. The 123 million is, the majority of it is made up of accruals of 80 million, of which is the back pay, which is the bargaining units, which is for the EPA and the TU, which is accrued and is due to be settled. The other amounts are fairly small given the size of the company.
All right. Projects 29 million, just last one.
Yes, well, this would represent monies that we collected for projects, but the work has not yet been done. So it is due to be paid to the clients once the completion certificate has been signed off by the engineers and the project accountants and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Just a very quick question. It is my impression, looking at the approximately 300 security officers and 2,500 maintenance workers, and juxtaposing that with the vacancy for about 150 security officers. It's my experience, I may be wrong, and my impression that the maintenance workers are mainly female and the security workers are mainly male. And in the context of the attrition rate and all of that, what I want to know is, if that is the fact that the vacancies for the security officers will most likely attract the males, is anything being done or considered in the strategic plan to bring more females into that area, and what provisions can be made? Because obviously there are a lot of single mothers and so on. How can we assist? Because we have so many females coming, looking for jobs and always asking for maintenance because of the hours of security and so on. Can anything be done, or has that been considered in the recruitment strategy?
Thank you, Member Chair. Well, firstly, MTS do not discriminate on gender. So persons who seek job, we employ. But what we had to do with respect to security, we had a ratio, more men than women in security over the years. But because of the shortage in security, we actually opened it up over the last 8 or 9 years. And so now, in a recruiting class of 25, you will have 20 women coming and 5 men, which is posing another problem, because many of our clients are saying we want strong-bodied, able men to be in security. So we have to balance it. It's a balancing act. In terms of maintenance, presently, we are not dealing with hiring maintenance personnel unless we get a contract. We win a contract, then we will hire persons for that contract. So soon, we will have to reach a point where when we tender for a contract and it's won, we employ persons, we'd link them to that contract, and the moment that we lose that contract, we will have to terminate. Presently, MTS do not do that. We try to keep the employee and wait for contracts to come. So far, we are thankful that we are almost optimal with respect to some of that.
Much, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman and Madam PS, we have noted, again admirably, that you have run a pretty steady ship. We have noted that some of the worst excesses of things that would have transpired in some of the state agencies over recent years seem to have escaped MTS. Someone said to be poor is a crime, but maybe, although you're not exactly poor, that has worked to your advantage. So I've observed from your accounts, you've maintained a pretty steady ship. However, we have noted that you issued some bonds a long time ago, back in 2001, totaling about 574 million, and you would have made steady payments, and you've now brought that to about 167 million, which is still a liability. In your current economic circumstances, and based on the audited financials, it must be quite burdensome to have to treat with that. I wouldn't ask you to comment upon whether, because those bonds were issued to fund the SEM program. The SEM program, the Secondary Education Modernization Program. And I see that that liability, at least 167 million worth of it, has remained over many years on your accounts. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Member. Mr. Chair. The good news is that, the bad news is on our book. The good news is that we do not pay for it. It's being paid by the Ministry of Finance. It's just the loan was taken in our name, the guarantees the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So the Ministry of Finance would honor that payment on a regular basis as per schedule. And as far as I'm aware, they have been paying on a regular basis. I do not know if the CFO would want to comment more on it.
I would like to hear his thoughts on the matter.
Thank you, Chair. The loan was taken a long time ago. It was used to purchase schools, to build schools. It is being paid biannually, twice per year. It is not MTS. The MTS doesn't pay it. It is paid by the Ministry of Finance. But MTS is legally binding. So as such, it is required to be placed on our accounts. But in reality, it is financed by the Ministry of Finance every 6 months. And it is, as far as I know, it is up to date and it's okay.
All right, nothing more on that matter. Thank you very much.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, just ask a follow-up question on that? This is the Ministry of Finance. Following on Minister Hines' questions. Member, all right. I give you your respect, member. There's a question of 167 million. The comments are based on the 2015 management letter. They are contradicting views from the audit observation and MTS's response with regard to an amount due to bondholders in the sum of 167 million. MTS response is legally binding financial transaction between MTS and the various financial institutions, and as such it is a valid liability of the company. So on one hand there's a question being asked about the 167 million, and they are contradicting views. Has this come to your attention from the Ministry of Finance, and how you might be able to deal with that based on the contradiction that is existing for this large sum?
Thank you, Member. I don't know to rehash what Mr. Ferguson was saying, but the bonds was raised. It could not have raised by the Ministry of Finance, so they used MTS to raise the bonds, and they were project managers for the secondary education modernization program. However, because it is on MTS books, they are liable for the bonds. It must be, they are liable for the payments of the bonds. However, it is not paid by MTS. It is guaranteed and serviced by the Ministry of Finance.
Is there a contradiction?
Member, I think I'll have to get back. I'll have to get back to you on that. I will liaise with MTS and provide a written response to that question.
Mr. Yes, you want to make a point, sir?
Thank you, Chair. The reason is that there's an international financial reporting standard which states that you should report its economic form, not its legal form, and that's what the auditor was bringing up. But if we follow that standard in this case, the liability, if you move it from MTS, it wouldn't exist anywhere. And therefore, we say that it must exist somewhere in the government. And that was the reason for it. But the auditor has to follow his protocol and bring up the standard of legal form versus economic reality.
So to bring some clarity to it, the responsibility falls with you all still?
Yes. Legally.
Legally, as the borrower of the,
yes.
of the funding?
Yes.
But the Ministry of Finance has undertaken the responsibility to pay it on your behalf. But this 167 is still outstanding, or?
Yes, yes it is. Yes, it is.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to ask the CEO, based on your submission, it was indicated that there was an $8.7 million increase in operating expenses over the period 2008 to 2016. And that was attributed to the rates of inflation over that period, 2008 to 2016. You care to elaborate on that for us?
Mr. Chair, I think the answer, if I can recall, unless we didn't correct it, it also added that the revenue increased over that period by $80 million. That the revenue also increased over that period by $80 million. So there would have been a direct correlation between new contracts won, supplies, etc., that would have caused the overrun. So apart from inflation, it has to do linked, and there's a correlation between $80 million increase in revenue caused by winning new contracts.
All right. Well, listen, I think that, first of all, I think that we would have dealt with the areas that we would have liked to deal with this morning. We always reserve the right as a committee either to recall you or to write to you, or both, for further clarification on issues that members may wish to clarify, because a report will have to be generated to the Parliament. So what I would ask of you, and maybe that would be part of the plan that you're going to make available to us, but if there are areas of improvement that you would like to put on the record as we seek to bring our meeting to a close, I would ask that you can do so, or if you would like to share with this committee recommendations for addressing some of the major critical areas in a more detailed way with this committee, you can also put those in writing, and we can use those as part of our formulation of the final report that we'll have to generate and submit to the Parliament. So maybe I would like to suggest that any additional thoughts you may have, Chairman, you may have, that you'd like to share with this committee on the way forward to address the challenges that you have, please feel free to put those in writing and have same submitted within the next 14 days to us before we generate our final report.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. So in closing, I would now ask you, Madam Chair, if you'd like to make any closing remarks at this time, and I'll also give the CEO a few seconds to also add to what you may have advanced. So I'll give you the opportunity to make final closing remarks.
I'd like to thank the committee, Chair, members, for the time that you all take to for an exercise like this. Sometimes it gives us the opportunity to get a new idea or to have clarity or to be commended publicly, and I thank you all for that. We just would like to reiterate that MTS will continue to operate in a manner that does not require government subvention. We will continue to improve and enhance our capability and our future plans to meet the need of our clients, which is the government, and as such, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I, again, thank you and wish you a Merry, Merry Christmas and a very productive and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with the Chairman of the Board of Directors. I want to thank the committee for having us. It's my first experience here. And I want to thank the committee for exposing some new thoughts and ideas in my head, because while the session was going on, I've been thinking a lot about some other things. I want to give the commitment to the committee and to the country that MTS will continue to respect itself and continue to be the best it can for Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
I wanted to reiterate the point that Mr. Fitzgerald Hines mentioned, particularly at the level of recruitment. Given the new world that we are living in with so many unpredictabilities and uncertainties, and with the real possibility of terror attacks in countries like ours, these are matters that you have to factor into your plans, your training, your recruitment. And again, because you emphasize some of these strategic buildings and areas of operations that you have these workers operating, we have to be very, very mindful that MTS does play a very critical role, but because of the dynamics of our global environment, you need to really be on top of your game and making the relevant and necessary changes through new protocols and training methodologies to ensure the safety and the security of the personnel that you are charged with at least safeguarding during those projects and contracts that have been awarded to MTS. So on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, may I once again thank officials from the Ministry of Finance Investment Division for being here, officials from the Ministry of Public Utilities, and of course the team led by the chairman of MTS, and of course your good self as the CEO, as well as other members of your team for being here with us in the season of goodwill and peace toward all men and women. We too would like to extend to you warmest greetings for the season and a very productive, rewarding, and very progressive 2018. This meeting is now suspended. Thank you very much.